It's not in the face! Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Hey, Not the Face with your host, John Nash, and your producer, me, Steffi Haynes. And today we are looking at new updates to the antitrust cases, including a new filing directed at Dominance MMA. We're also going to discuss some topics that Mark Shapiro spoke on during the Morgan Stanley Tech Conference. He talked about how the White House card and fighter pay and all sorts of things. So we'll be looking at that. We're going to take a look at a whistleblower's claims that the Paramount president leaked details of the UFC broadcast deal. We're going to talk about how important this new Warner Brothers merger might be to TKO. There's a whole lot more, so you might want to make sure that you are subscribed and with a paid subscription so that you have access to the whole thing, because if you're new here, we put about half of this show behind a paywall. But we always give lots of juicy tidbits. Any filings we have, we also include those behind the paywall. So our paying subscribers get access to the entire filings, lawsuits, all sorts of stuff. So it's worth it. Now, John, how the heck are you?
Oh, great. As I told you earlier for the show, I'm exhausted from taking my mom shopping. But besides that, I'm doing good.
Your 86-year-old mom is running you ragged?
87, and yes, she is. It's I cannot believe how long that woman has to look through like baked goods to make a decision. It's insane. But I'm enjoying it. It's my last week in Minnesota, so I better take advantage of it while I can.
Well, all right. I didn't know it was her. When was her birthday? Was it last week?
No, last year. She's been 87 for a while. She was 88
I see.
this
I
year.
lost a whole entire year. I keep thinking that she's still 86. Well, you know what? She's sharp as a tack still. So there's that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
She
Yeah.
is. She runs you around. Bingo Saturdays, Taco Tuesdays at the VFW. She keeps you on your toes, man.
She really takes advantage of us, so that's for sure. So,
All right. Well, I'm going to put you back on track to something that you know and love, and that is the business of combat sports. So let's start off with updates to the UFC antitrust cases, because there were some exhibits attached to the plaintiff's motion for sanctions. Was there anything of interest among them?
Yeah, there was several things. This was, if you know, last episode we talked about that motion for sanctions, what the plaintiffs are asking for, and there was a bunch of exhibits attached to it. So I didn't have a chance to go through them before the show, but now I have. And a few of them are, and I'm not going to go through all of them because there's a tremendous amount. Like one of them is a listing. It doesn't show the actual communications, but it's a summary of White's communications on the phones that they have from October 1st, 2017 to July 3, 2020. That's one period where they have his records. So they got AT&T records to reflect the number of texts between Dana White and other UFC and TKO executives. And during that period from October 1, 2017 to July 3rd, 2020, he texted one Hunter Campbell, the Hunter Campbell private number. Remember the number that Hunter Campbell, I guess, hadn't shared as one of his phone numbers with the plaintiffs for discovery?
Yeah.
That phone he shared. Him and Dana White had 3,084 texts. Then the business phone of Hunter Campbell, 614. And then Ari Emanuel, 275 times. Mick Maynard, 1,881. Denitsa Bachvorava, that was 2,829 times. So that's the executives over at TKO Endeavor that they're communicating. And it also goes through during that same period, his communications with fighters. So we know which fighters he was texting with the most during those 2 periods. And Rashad Evans was number 1 at 194. Surprising. I'm going to let you take a guess. Who do you think's number 2? You will never get it.
Conor McGregor.
No, Josh Berkman at 144.
Wait, what?
I never would have guessed that. And then down the line with Dustin Poirier, Misha Tate, Diego Sanchez, Pettis, Brian Caraway was on the list, Daniel Cormier, Tony Ferguson, Michael Bisping, and 10th and last on this list, there's obviously other fighters, is Chris Cyborg at 26 communications during that period. And then they have a summary of his conversations with fighter representatives. And so there's, I take a guess who's number 1. I'm pretty sure you will guess it.
Oh, it's got to be Dominance MMA.
Yes, it's Ali Abdelaziz, 367 communications between them. Audiatar comes in 2, and then down the line. And this is kind of surprising. They have not listed as a fighter, but as a representative, Uriah Faber, second to last. Mulki Kawa is the final person. There's probably other managers, but the final person on this list with 14. So that's kind of interesting. So they have a lot of stuff like that breaking down, communications, not the exact text, but they have some of them. They give an outline of what was talked about and stuff about who they communicated with, things like that. They also had some declarations. They had a declaration from a Veronica Perez. This is the plaintiffs. And Veronica Perez is a senior computer forensics examiner. And so she provided expert testimony on her declaration regarding the inadequacy of the defendant's mobile device collection. She criticized the use of iTunes backups, which is apparently what they're doing, noted that they are last resort options that are susceptible to tampering, and often fail to capture system files, keychains, things like that. She also highlighted the significant discrepancy in Dana White's message volume. So from it decreased from over 16,000 threads he was in 2022 to just 452 in 2025. So she labeled this trend substantial and consistent with manual deletion or the use of uncollected apps. So her opinion, expert opinion, is either to go down that much in the amount of threads you're on, communication threads, you either deleted it, right, or it's on apps or other devices that you haven't handed over. She also concludes that physical forensic acquisitions are necessary to investigate the true extent of the missing data. And so that's the first one. Then they had another expert declaration from an electronic discovery expert, Philip Favreau, who asserted that the defendant failed to take reasonable steps to preserve the relevant material, particularly the text and instant messages he brought up. And this is his words, he characterized their preservation efforts as disorganized and haphazard. And he noticed a lack of formal bring your own device policies. He also talked about insufficient custodian training and failure to disable automatic deletion features. And he points to 2 specific spoliations. He pointed to Tracy Long maintained a 30-day auto delete setting, and Aria Manuel used Signal with disappearing messages. And Dana White, I should say, decommissioned phones were kept in an unsecured drawer where one was likely stolen. So he concludes this conduct evinces a willful disregard for preservation rules, or preservation duties, I should say, and intended to conceal adverse evidence. So again, he's kind of suggesting this might not have been accidental. And then there was another declaration of Jeremy Gradwell regarding AT&T records. And so he's an attorney who summarized the evidence obtained from AT&T regarding the mobile activity of Dana White and Hunter Campbell. And after reviewing 100,000 pages of records, Gradwell identified several phone numbers belonging to White, and he prepared summary charts. He has detailing communication logs between these executives. Some of them are in these exhibits. And then these third-party records serve as a benchmark to highlight gaps in the defendant's own production. And then finally, there's actually a lot more than this. There's like 66 exhibits, although many of them are sealed. The other thing that I thought was interesting, they had a proposed order granting the plaintiff's motion for sanctions. So what this is a pre-written order for the judge. This tells you what the plaintiffs are seeking the judge to do. And this proposed order by Judge Boulware from them. It details extensive findings of spoliation discovery violations by the defendants. The court, this again, what the plaintiffs are asking the court to find, finds that key spoilators, which include White, Emanuel, McMaynard, intentionally destroyed or failed to preserve electronic message through manual deletions, enabling ephemeral messaging, and mishandling decommissioned devices. Consequently, the court grants severe sanctions. They want them to enter default against the defendants, issue a mandatory, irrebuttable adverse inference instructions to the jury, and preclude the defendants from introducing certain evidence regarding fighter pay structure and market competition. So I guess that'd be a slam dunk home run if the judge agreed with them. So the order also deemed all undisclosed devices as intentionally spoliated with the intent to deprive plaintiffs of evidence. So if the judge would grant that, again, that would be a massive victory for the fighters. I don't know if he will. That might be more wishful thinking on their part, but who knows for sure. But that's the exhibits. That's a bunch of them. I mean, there's more than that. But that's a lot of the ones I found the most interesting. Some of them, the details in them as well. We will post some of these as we always do on the documents we get from Pacer and stuff. We will post some of them on Substack. So if you're interested, you can just download them for the paid subscribers. That is, you can download them, peruse some of them yourself, and see what you think.
Wow. Now, there was a filing that was directed at Dominance MMA. What was that?
Yeah, there's another filing, I should say, just came, I believe, today. I think it came today, I guess, today being yesterday, because we record yesterday. The shows are always recorded a day early and then posted. So whatever day this comes out, the day before, I think the filing was made. And this document that was filed was a legal reply. It was filed by the plaintiffs in support of the application they put forward to hold the third party being Dominance MMA, in contempt for failing to comply with the court order regarding all the requests. So here's some of the key points they brought up. They brought that there was defiance of court order. The plaintiffs argued that Dominance has directly defied the order to produce materials. So that's one. The failed compliance is another point. Dominance allegedly broke off negotiations regarding a production schedule. So, and then they supposedly reneged on an agreement to hire a document collection vendor. The plaintiffs also dismissed Dominance claim that the order was not rigid, asserting the court's language was plain and definitive. And then there's some custodial and spoliation issues, because Dominance claimed that it cannot produce documents for 2 of the 3 custodians because they quit, which the plaintiffs argue raises spoliation concerns themselves, because if these are the people who are supposed to have it and they quit, did they lose it? Did they take it with them? Then there's they knocked down the confidentiality concerns. The plaintiffs contended that Dominance made these arguments about confidentiality. They claim it's in bad faith, as a protective order addendum was already adopted to address these specific issues. So your fear of them getting leaked to the public is unfounded, they're claiming. Then they bring up that Dominance attempted a unilateral, unsuccessful collection of Ali Abdelaziz's devices, which the plaintiffs argue demonstrates further procedural failure because you couldn't get the CEO's material. And then they have a request for remedies. They request that the court hold Dominance contempt, set specific production deadlines, and order reimbursement for attorney fees and costs. Also, I want to go over one. I skirted on a little bit, but the big thing from the previous Dominance filing, the Dominance filed defending themselves, challenging this request by the plaintiffs, if you recall, was Dominance claim that there was they had some criticism about a video that was filed that defamed them. There was defamation involved. And so Dominance recording that, the plaintiffs argued this time that the Dominance has used a video posted by a fighter as a pretext to avoid its discovery obligations. And the reasoning, the plaintiff's argument on this point is that the Dominance mischaracterized the video, because Dominance claimed that the video posted by a fighter created a conflict or safety concern, that justified stopping their document production. And so the plaintiffs argue that this is bad faith excuse because the video does not legally or practically interfere with Dominant's ability to comply with the court's order. The plaintiff also asserted that the fighters, and this is we brought this up, the fighters' public social media post has no bearing on their legal duty to produce documents. They argue that Dominance used it as a distraction. They point out that that the video itself included no material in it that was confidential, and said the plaintiff was just basically repeating what the judge had said. And on top of that, so that video, right, there's no bearing on the case. There's no defamation involved. It was a private video, so they kind of highlighted all the stuff we'd brought up earlier. On top of that, there was also the charge, the Dominance's claim that several fighters are worried about information being leaked. They don't want to share it. And the plaintiffs pointed out that Dominance did not share testimony, from any of these fighters. Did not. So in other words, they didn't reveal the fighters. If you're going to do that, the fighters should post something with Dominance saying, "I do not want my stuff revealed. I don't want to have it shared." And yet they did that. They just named anonymous fighters, and so they brought that up as well. So that is the plaintiff's rebuttal to Dominance's filing as a rebuttal to the original request for a sanctions against them.
Wow. I gotta back up for a second because
yes.
Ari Emanuel using disappearing signal messages, that just screams spoliation to me.
I mean, it's obvious. And this is the thing. I forgot to mention this. I should have brought it up, but this was not revealed from this case. That actually came out of the WWE lawsuits going on right now about the merger of the WWE and the UFC. Shareholders are suing over that. And so that got leaked in that case. And so they discovered, the plaintiff's attorneys obviously discovered that leak from that case. And so cited it as evidence like, hey, listen, this other case is showing that, we are worried about the spoliation here. And we have evidence from this other case that that's what Ari Emanuel is doing. And the reason they have that, this is the other thing, the reason they know that Ari Emanuel was doing that is because they had access to Vince McMahon's phone. And so they had, I think, Vince McMahon's messages, but Ari's was missing. And so they could determine that, he has some deleting feature on, because it's Signal, you can do that. And so we have Vince's side of the message. We don't have Ari, but he's under protective order. Why is he sending messages that are being deleted? So, and then I should point out one other thing about this case on the discovery side. These exhibits they filed, not only did they file as part of these exhibits, the example of Ari Emanuel's deleting messages from Signal from the WWE case that he was sharing with Vince McMahon. Remember the case that we discussed on here, the Brazilian case, right? With Mick Mader talking to I cannot remember the MMA manager right now, but he was in
Jason
communications.
House?
No, it was a Brazilian manager.
I know who you're talking about.
Marcelo Brigid.
Brigado or something like that.
Yeah.
I know who you're talking about. Yes.
It will come to me as immediately as soon as we get to another subject. But that they cited that case too, and the text messages in that case between them as an example, because I believe they said we do not have these messages, even though we should, because Mick Maynard should have preserved his messages.
Boy, the plot thickens. Big time. All right. So we're going to move forward. We're going to put a pin in that until we get some more information. I mean, these filings are coming rapid fire. So I have no doubt that the next time we record, we'll probably have some more. But for now, we're going to move on. Excuse me. Mark Shapiro spoke at Morgan Stanley's Tech Conference, and one of the things that he discussed was the White House event. Was there any new information there?
Yeah, actually, I mean, I shouldn't say I'm not 100% new. Some elaboration that in some ways raises more questions, and some of the same questions we had before. the big thing that I noticed about it when he talked about it, he brought up again that it's a $60 million fee, right? And he confirmed, though, that $60 million fee includes the fighter pay. Remember, a lot of people were comparing this to the Sphere show, where that $20 million cost was just production cost, not fighter pay. Here they're confirming it's $60 million, includes fighter pay. But he said since they're still negotiating the fights, that cost will probably go up. Also guaranteed that every fight will be all-star caliber. We'll have to wait and see. I don't know what Mark Shapiro's definition of all-star caliber is. I'm sure maybe it is. Maybe it'll just be an amazing card, but who knows for sure. And so he confirmed $60 million it's going to cost, that they claim that they will not make money on this no matter what. The U.S. government will not pay for any of it. He also talked about how they expect half the cost to be picked up by their partners, that they have, that their partners, I guess, their partners are, well, I guess I should, the way he phrased it, let's go specific here, that it'll be from their inventory packages selling to corporate sponsors. So that's where they're going to get half of the revenue. And if it goes above $60 million, they will increase that. And that will cut the cost in half, their expenses. And so they should technically lose about $30 million, but he thinks it's worth it because of the exposure, all these other things. But this is where I have a question. This is the part that raises that question I had earlier, because inventory packages to be sold to your corporate sponsors, an inventory package that does not cover, should not cover, under that definition, should not cover, or under that terminology, should not cover broadcast rights. That's separate. An inventory package, in sports sponsorship, usually refers to like the assets a promoter owns or controls that's then packaged and sold to corporate sponsors, obviously. So this would be like, the cage ring signage and branding, right? That's one. Floor mats and logos on the bottom of the canvas. That's another. On-site LED board placement. They can put sponsors there. You can have sponsored segments, like how UFC has Fight of the Night now being sponsored by someone. Was it the light heavyweight division was sponsored by someone? Things like that. There's, the official designation. There's like the official beer of the UFC. A VIP hospitality packages would fit in that. Branded activation spaces at the venue would fit in that. Then there's also digital and social media integration elements. We've seen that with boxing a lot, where they get a partner to help advertise the event.
Before you go forward, how much are they utilizing social media right now? Because they've got the Meta partnership, and I can't help but notice how dead Threads is. So I'm just curious if you have an idea, especially since you just mentioned that, sort of like, is social media really important to UFC TKO right now?
I would not know. I don't have access to their metrics. I don't follow that kind of stuff closely. I'd have to look into it, but I'm not sure social media is as important for anybody as much as it used to be, because the way the social media platforms, throttle traffic and stuff, unless you pay for advertising revenue. So, pay for the advertising, I should say, not revenue. You pay for advertising, they'll let your material be seen, but they throttle a lot of material. Like, look at your, you go to your X account and what you really want to see. I mean, what you want your thread to be, your Twitter X stream to be. It's not. It's especially when it's not for those you follow. When it's ever they inject all this stuff. Now, truthfully, it's revealed preferences often that they know that there's certain things you like. But the truth is, too, I might click on and watch, Punch the Monkey all the time he shows up. But the truth is, I would prefer, a Twitter feed that did not have tons of Punch the Monkey. I like as much as I like Punch the Monkey. Here's a great example, and I have a feeling this is being force fed on me by X. Is there was that incident at BAFTA with the man with Tourette's said the N-word and everybody had a big uproar. Well, I clicked on a couple accounts that were discussing it just to see the story and everything. next thing I know, my thread is full of it, full of comments, discussion about that incident from people I've never followed, never heard of, no matter what. And I can only imagine that the algorithm decided that this is triggering so much interaction, so much, arguing on Twitter, so much basically rage bait on the platform, that we're going to push this on people to get them engaged in it. And so that's, I think we see a lot of that now. So I'm not sure how much social media is useful as it used to be for a lot of products, because it's, in the past, at least on X, the UFC probably got a lot of mileage out of fighters and Dana White and everybody tweeting, because people would share it and become these big, amongst the fan base, a viral story. I'm just not sure how much people are seeing that like they used to.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So, but to get back on my point, I was on the inventory packages that they were selling. So all that stuff is supposedly going to be worth like 30 million plus for the UFC. But you notice what I didn't mention was the broadcast rights. Mm-hmm. So the question is then, so are they considering broadcast rights as part of the inventory package to be sold to sponsors? Well, that doesn't, possibly, but it doesn't really meet that definition. So it doesn't seem that would be correct. Are they saying they're not going to get paid by Paramount? I find that incredibly hard to believe. And so it seems likely to me they're just not including, for whatever reason, they're not including the fee they're going to get from Paramount. And if if that does not include the fee and we want to add the Paramount fee, well, that would probably take up the 30 million. That would make up the missing 30 million right there. So I'm just not sold yet that they're really going to lose money on this event. They might not make money. He might be correct about that. But if you include, what we could expect their media rights deal to be, they're at the end of their last deal, I believe, I couldn't be mistaken, but I believe ESPN was paying them per numbered event, 23 million guaranteed. And so there will be a step up from that. They might be close to 30 million now, or maybe a little under. Well, right there, that covers the cost that's missing. So I would like to get, it'd be great if we got some confirmation one way or the other. Is the broadcast rights being included or not? Because if they're not being included, then, the idea that they're going to lose tens of millions of dollars does not seem accurate to me.
He talked about Zuffa boxing too. Did he say anything interesting?
Yeah, they talked about it a lot. And, one thing you can tell is how important Zuffa boxing is, because for Zuffa boxing, they keep they keep stressing to the shareholders the potential valuation. And so they view this as a major potential financial winner for them. Like he had a comment that if Zuffa boxing could become just half what the UFC is, right? Just half. Like that's probably their floor. Think of how much extra value that would bring to the company. And I think that's what they're shooting for. They want this entity to be some massive, they have high expectations for it. That's for sure. If they did not have such high expectations, they wouldn't talk about it so much. They wouldn't stress it to shareholders that, after WWE and UFC got these big media rights, there is a new entity we're bringing in that's going to give us massive amounts of returns, just like the UFC and WWE does. And so that's one thing that's very noteworthy. The other thing noteworthy about it, or of interest, I thought, well, several things. We'll go through them really quick. One thing he said, he laid out twice. He laid out the opportunity that it is, and he laid out all the things wrong with boxing and what they're fixing. The first time he talked about, he says, we're going to build boxing into a version of what the UFC is, and they're going to get out the corruption, get out the confusion, and make sure the best fighters are fighting the best fighters and being paid as they should to fight the best fighters. That's the first time he talked about. The second time he talked about this is a ripe with opportunity. For years, and you could tell they have these talking points for years, confusion in the marketplace, fights that cost too much money from a pay-per-view perspective, knee deep in corruption. Number one doesn't fight number two. Champion doesn't fight number one ranked. I'm surprised it has gone on for this long. Too many promoters, backroom deals. We are cleaning that up. and we are going to create a real league here where we can market the personalities. We can create the next Sugar Ray Leonard. Okay, so then finally, this is a huge opportunity. And if we can just build boxing in the next 5 to 10 years, into half what the UFC is or WWE, well, then we're a growth story that you want to jump into. So that's, to me, the two paragraphs I quoted about Zuffa Boxing was the most interesting. And there's a lot to pick apart there, I'm sure you can see. Because one is, I guess we'll get to the fighter pay part about Zuffa Boxing here first, the comment, because he said two things. And the first one, he said, the best fighters are fighting the best fighters and being paid as they should, okay, to fight the best fighters. And then the second time he said, fights that cost too much money from a pay-per-view perspective. Now, is he talking about too much money to produce or too much money for the fans? I guess from a pay-per-view perspective, it might be they're paying for the pay-per-view, so that might be the problem. But same time, UFC has been, they did more pay-per-view events than boxing half the time for many years, and that was never raised as a concern. But on the quote about the best fighters are fighting the best fighters and being paid as they should, there's two ways to interpret that they're going to make sure these boxers get paid tremendous amount of money, as if they're being underpaid right now. They'll be paid a tremendous amount of money to fight the best fighters. But the other way is perhaps, did he mean this in the way Dana White has said in the past, that boxers are too highly paid? That's another interpretation. Is that what he meant, that boxers are too highly paid?
That's what he meant.
I mean, or is that what, are you supposed to interpret it on the outside one way, but in-house they have another interpretation? I'm not sure. But that's one way to interpret it, is that they think that the cost will be brought down. And if you think about it, there are too many promoters they bring up. Well, as we've talked about many a times in sports, what drives up salaries? What drives up wages? Competition. If you want to get rid of promoters, you're trying to get rid of some competition. And so you have that going for it. So I thought he doesn't come out right and say it, but there's a lot to pick apart here and try to analyze what they're doing. But the key thing is they view this, again, as a league, air quotes, because they are not leagues, but as a way, I'm pretty sure this is what they intend. They want to have it self-contained. They don't want to have the competition. I don't know, how having the UBO system that they want to put in is going to create a model in boxing that already has multiple fighters spread around multiple promoters, how that's going to get number one to fight number two if you refuse to co-promote it all. That seems like it'd do the opposite. But the intent here, I think, is pretty clear. What they want to do is recreate a UFC model where they have a walled, self-contained garden, and that they can eventually bring down the costs of the fighters, because that's how you're going to get the type of returns that's going to give you a valuation on par with UFC or WWE.
Now, he did bring up fighter pay. Let's talk about that.
Well, yeah, he did. He got asked that, and I don't think he was very clear in his answer. Surprise, surprise. They got that down. So talking about the fighter pay, and he also mentioned this is the same as WWE superstar pay. And I just when did they start calling their wrestlers superstars? When did they stop calling them wrestlers? What a dumb term. Just a personal. I just recently discovered this, and it's for some reason it really grates me, because it's pro wrestling, right? At least if you're pretending, they're supposed to be wrestlers, like they're athletes, not superstars. So anyways, I digress. So they pointed out that they wanted to point out two things. One is that their margins, and this is the margins for the company, not the margins for the UFC. So the margins for TKO, the adjusted EBITDA, is 33.5% this year. And next year, they're expecting it to hit almost 40%, 39.6%. And he stressed that this margin is inclusive of increased fighter and superstar pay. So they expect pay to go up, but the margins also to go up. And he also pointed out how it's important to them to reward the fighters. They talked about how Dana White announced the fight of the night bonuses will be doubled from 50,000 to 100,000. And so now that's good, I guess, that they're going to get double bonuses, right? But if that's the totality of the increases. It's not that much, especially when you see that the revenue is going up. Now, the other thing is the UFC. This was from an earlier discussion, but this year they had an EBITDA of 57%, and there's expectations for next year that EBITDA will hit 60%, will go up, climb up 3%. And so you look at that increased EBITDA. So fighter pay will probably go up, but I would have to imagine, that it does not, based on the fact that they expect EBITDA margins to increase, a healthy margin to increase several percentage points. Even with increased fighter pay, you would have to expect, they don't expect the fighter wage share to increase. If anything, the fighter wage share will probably decrease, but they view it as that fighter pay is getting better because the wage level is going up. And I'm sure there's people, and in fact, I know several people will say, oh, that's all that matters is fighter pay is going up, and the wage shares don't matter. It's all about, what you get paid. You'd either get paid a small percentage of a large amount of money than a large percentage of a small, and that's true. But again, I recommend they read, James Quinn's books or Speak to the Man, because as he points out often, is that wage levels can go up, but the beauty of having a percentage, a share, knowing that you're getting a large percentage of the revenue, is that when there's an increase in their pay, when there's an increase in the revenue brought in, guess who gets a big pay bump automatically? The people that got a wage share, a split based on a percentage. And so if you're getting a percentage, when there's a new TV deal, whatever, you don't have to negotiate just a slight increase. You keep that wage percentage that you had, and it ends up being a massive increase. And so that's the benefit. That's why, as I talk to him, and I have to have him back on the show to go over some of the stuff that I talked to him off the air on. But that's the benefits of like these sports leagues, but also boxers asking for a split of the revenue compared to just a flat fee. Because if you ask for a split of the revenue, and your information, you are in a hole compared to the promoter. Even with the Ali Act, that's not revealed to after the bout, after you get paid. So you are at a detriment in negotiations with the promoter because they really know the value and what's being discussed. So if you can get a percentage of the total revenue, well, guess what? When if that promoter can negotiate with you and pretend that it's not going to be quite as big event and pay you more than what you're getting now, and you'd walk away happy. Let's say you're getting $2 million. He says, I'm going to give you $5 million. You're like, oh, that's great. I got a big raise. And you're just not aware that the promoter just walked away with 30 or 40 million. Compare that to a boxer that has a contract that says I get 70%, 75% of the net revenue. Well, without even negotiating, he could walk away, not with 5 million, with 20, 30 million. That sizable difference, right? And so that's the benefit of getting a large share of the revenue. And here it seems like the UFC, as we know, they've mastered the art of not doing that. So let's do.
Let's talk about Paramount, because the talk of the town for the past week has been that Netflix backed off of their offer, got a $2.9 billion, sweetheart deal, walk-away fee, and Paramount is, got a pending merger with Warner Brothers Discovery. How important, or maybe not important, is that merger to TKO?
Well, they're excited by it. They see a lot of opportunity because it's going to add HBO to the mix. It's going to have the Warner Brothers Warner Brothers platforms to the mix. So that's, it's beneficial, I guess, to TKO. It's also beneficial for the other TKO properties because a merger takes off the playing field of potentially an HBO or some other entity where competitors, isn't right now on one of the Warner Brothers properties, isn't AEW wrestling on one of them?
Yep.
Are they going to remain there? Is Paramount going to be more concerned about their dealings with TKO than AEW? Things like that could be beneficial to TKO because it could hurt their competitors. Again, it takes off a platform. So if a rival in boxing or anything is looking for a spot, there's less spots to find. So all that's great for him. I mean, it's hopefully, really hopefully, fingers crossed here. We know that the current Trump administration is not going to do anything to block this merger. The hope is that the states can do something about it, because there's no way this merger, just like the Netflix merger was god awful too. That should have never been allowed. And there's questions if it would have, because the Trump administration probably would have blocked that one. But this one should not be allowed either. And so I think it's terrible for the industry. It's going to lay off to massive layoffs in Hollywood, because Paramount's going to be already in debt, going to be in more debt. They're going to try to do tons of cost-cutting measures. The one risk, I think, for TKO, the big risk here is that massive amount of debt that Paramount's going to carry, because they're paying out a ton of money to UFC here. And if their finances, if they cannot find a way to turn this into a way to make money off this merger, UFC is going to demand to get paid, but is their platform going to be viable in the future if they can't afford to pay out not just them, but like the NFL and all the other entities they've in South Park, and what the guy Taylor Sheridan and all the other people they're dishing shit tons of money to. That's a technical term, shit tons. Those people, I don't know how they're going to do this. I question how they're going to be able to afford to pay everybody based on the amount of debt they're going to be holding after all this.
Yeah, $79 billion is the estimate on the debt. That's a lot.
Nothing to sneeze at.
All right. Let's talk about a Paramount whistleblower, because this whistleblower says that Paramount president Jeff Shell leaked the details of the $7.7 billion UFC broadcast rights deal. What did you think of that story? Did you have anything that stood out to you?
I just wouldn't be shocked if it's true. There's not a ton of details about it. Just that it happened, that this whistleblower, who's a big gambling guy, brought it up. Basically, professional whistleblower. He revealed it, but there's not a ton of details. But I wouldn't be really shocked. I guess the big risk is that it's inside information that would have benefited people that would know to then buy shares of TKO, knowing that when this deal gets announced, how big it is that the shares will go up in value, which is what happened. But I wouldn't be shocked if it happened, because we've seen it repeatedly happen nowadays with, stocks. For God's sake, one of the biggest things going right now is polymarket stuff. And they stress, they celebrate insider trading. There's people trying to bet on a fucking war on the inside information. Yeah. That's how bad it's got. So we live in a society, I think, that things like this, no one cares about anymore. So I would not be shocked if it ended up being true, that he leaked it and people took advantage of it to get to make some money by buying the stock before the announcement was made.
You just know Martha Stewart is spitting fucking nails right now.
Yeah, she's, she should have waited a few years. She would have got off scot-free.
All right. Do you think that we're going to see Zuffa Boxing on a different platform next year? Because this year they're on Paramount Plus for 12 events at $100 million. Do you think we're going to see them on one of those other entities next year?
It's possible. There's always talk of what they could do with the other entities. Is it beneficial to move them to HBO? If they do, again, we got to remember the merger will not take place, if it does, until probably the fall, right? So end of the year towards. But would HBO Boxing make more sense? That's possible. I think it's also a very strong possibility with all the platforms they have before they start merging and dropping and liquidating these platforms, is that maybe Zuffa Boxing and UFC, for that matter, maybe they appear on multiple platforms. Because right now, the talk is UFC will be on Paramount Plus, and some shows will air on CBS. But with the addition of the Warner Bros. Network Discovery, maybe they view that as a chance, like, oh, there's other platforms we could put live simulcasts and stuff. I wouldn't be shocked if that happens either. But HBO is the one that I think people have thrown out. I haven't heard any.
To access the bonus content of this episode, you must be a paid subscriber. To do that, go to heynottheface.substack.com and subscribe today.
Ow! Ow! Not the face! Ooh! Ooh! Okay, the face!